Last week, President Biden fired a Trump-appointed carryover. This is the Social Security Commissioner, Andrew Saul, and some people are excited about it, feeling that it was a bit overdue. We're lucky to be joined by one such individual, Executive Director for Social Security Works, Alex Lawson. Welcome to the Damage Report.
Thanks for having me.
Very glad to have you here. So first of all, it always strikes regular people as weird when appointees of incredibly important organizations, like having to deal with Social Security, do carry over and carry over for so long. I mean, he has been fired, but I mean, we're more than a half a year into Biden's term. So why did it take so long, and why did you and your organization want to see this happen?
You know, we were calling for it on day one because Social Security is an institution that touches everyone in this country. It's incredibly important. And so to leave an arsonist in place, a guy who was put there by Donald Trump in order to tear Social Security down from the inside, just like DeJoy at the Postal Service, who's still there. And the truth is, it's just like DC, a lot of people come up with a lot of reasons why they can't do things that are obvious, like getting rid of these guys. But really what it was is just, we just kept the pressure up and made it unavoidable. And you know, half a year, we wanted it on day one. We're still working on DeJoy.
Yeah, and look, when the conversation gets to why DeJoy is still around, there's always it's complicated. You know, what's the actual authority? Well, so that's DeJoy. When it comes to the Social Security Commissioner, is it clear? Does Biden have the clear authority? Should he have been able to exercise it earlier, or is it as complicated as people make it out to be in some other cases?
Now, we were pretty sure. I mean, if you remember back under Trump, he wanted to get rid of an appointee at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau because he wanted to put a goon in there who wouldn't protect people. And the Supreme Court ruled just squarely that the executive does have the authority to fire people who work for him. And actually that other branches of the government can't tie the hands of the executive in expressing that authority. So we were very confident that the Supreme Court had made it clear that Joe Biden had the authority to fire Andrew Saul, and that Andrew Saul's at-will employment. Also, the other thing from at-will is for cause, right? Like he has to be fired for doing something, and we showed a host of things that he did do that would also be cause. But what the White House actually waited for was there was a second Supreme Court ruling that reaffirmed that in fact the president can fire people working in the executive. And in that Supreme Court ruling that just came down, they actually noted the Social Security Administration as the next one. It was so obvious based on this ruling that Social Security was also covered. So the White House did have, was waiting for that, and they did act decently soon after they were reaffirmed by the second Supreme Court ruling.
Okay, well, there you mentioned the host of potential reasons why he should have fired Saul. So let's delve into that. You say that he was put in there to hamper or harm Social Security. So how did he go about doing that, and how significant were his efforts?
Very significant. So I think your viewers remember when Mick Mulvaney, he said, you know, they'd confused President Trump, or they'd been able to convince him that a part of Social Security that covers folks who become disabled and can no longer work was separate from the Social Security that Donald Trump promised he wouldn't touch when he ran for president. I'll just note that was significant, as he was the only Republican on stage who said he wasn't gonna touch Social Security. So these arsonists, Mick Mulvaney, the Paul Ryan types, the Ayn Rand believers, you know, they figured out a way to confuse Donald Trump, which probably wasn't that hard, and actually get him to aim at the disability program. And that's where Andrew Saul and his henchman, David Black, really hurt people, real people across this country by denying benefits that were earned, that people needed, putting pressure on independent administrative law judges to deny benefits, not based on the merits of the case, but just across the board as some sort of perverse cost-cutting pressure. And then they actually fired administrative law judges who didn't go along with it. And there was a ton of legal actions, whistleblower complaints, IG reports, or investigations into that pressure. That's why the union that represents those ALJs wanted to push Andrew Saul out. But the most heinous thing that Andrew Saul tried to implement, and we did block him on it, was called continuing disability reviews. And they exist, but what he wanted to do was accelerate them to a level that we hadn't seen since Ronald Reagan tried. And Ronald Reagan was overruled by a unanimous Senate at the time because it is so cruel. Exactly, it was a wow moment. The policy was so cruel that across this country, the governors were like, we have to end it. And if you're being really nice, you could say that Reagan didn't know what was gonna happen. But Andrew Saul and Mick Mulvaney and Donald Trump knew exactly what was gonna happen when they did it. That's why they did it. It rips people's benefits away from them after they have them. And when Reagan did it, we saw people killing themselves across this country rather than face the destitution and knowing that they couldn't live without these benefits, which again, they've earned. So that's what Andrew Saul was doing. And the fact was, while he was still in charge of the Social Security Administration, we defeated the accelerated rule, but he had the authority and was continuing to push to accelerate these continuing disability reviews. That's why it was so critical to get him out and so critical to get someone in who's not only not gonna do the wrong thing like hurt people, but actually is gonna reaffirm what Social Security is, which is a system of ever expanding economic security for all of us. So I am happy on that we got rid of the regressive, but now we need to look at what we can do going forward too.
Okay, so I understand that this is fairly recent, but is there something we have a successor now, what your organization, your individual assessment of this individual, do you think that it's going to mark a significant change? What are your sort of hopes or expectations for Social Security going forward now that you have someone new in charge?
So right now we have an acting commissioner, Kilolo, and she is great. She actually replaced Andrew Saul henchman, Mark Warshawski, who is the intellectual policy mind behind these cruel policies. She knows the program, but we do in DC, we are hearing that there's going to be also a push for a confirmed commissioner. And so there is yet another decision point for President Biden of what type of commissioner he's going to put forward for the confirmed. It could be, try to confirm the acting, it could be somebody else. But we do know that he wants to put forward somebody to be confirmed by the Senate. And we're saying he has to get somebody who can match up with what he laid out as his vision for Social Security when he was running for president. He ran on expanding Social Security. And you need a commissioner who understands that that's the goal here, is an ever expanding system of economic security.
And so I'm curious, how much of that can be accomplished, like sort of internal to the executive branch and the Social Security Administration, considering all of the roadblocks that we're seeing being thrown up in the Senate to virtually anything being done. Do you have hope that much can be accomplished, like on the side or outside of the influence of the Senate, assuming that the current obstruction continues?
Absolutely, and your point is exactly right. We want to push for legislative change, expand Social Security benefits for everyone. But what a commissioner can do atop this enormous federal agency is also huge. And in fact, the left has and Democrats have left that agency to right wingers for decades now because of the overlapping commissioner and because Obama never actually pushed really hard to get a confirmed commissioner, and he kept Bush's. And McConnell stole, he waited over 2 years without moving forward on confirming a commissioner. But what a commissioner can do is immediately start reviving people's understanding that Social Security is the system you can count on. Right now, because of this coordinated attack coming from Wall Street, if you ask many people, too many people, especially young people, what about Social Security, they will say, oh, it's not gonna be there for me. And my thing is like, if that's true, you should be so much angrier than you are right now because we pay for this. It comes out of our paychecks every single time. It's our money. And of course it's gonna be there for us. So the commissioner can do a lot to say, reinstate the earnings statements that used to be mailed out every single year, you remember? And then they just took them away against the law. And that happened under President Obama. So there's a ton of things like that. We can have more field offices instead of closing field offices. You can open them for longer. You can put in more frontline workers through the budgetary process, work with Congress to ensure that Social Security is getting the money, the services, everything in Social Security is paid for out of our contributions to it. The government doesn't give us anything, it's our money. And so what you need is a commissioner who's going to understand that and demand that Congress stop putting their finger on the system to try to just kill it by 1,000 cuts, which is what's been happening. And there's a host of things that the commissioner can do with executive authority.
Sure. Well, it sounds like successful in getting rid of Saul, but it sounds like in other ways your work is only beginning. So I hope that considering the stakes here, that you're successful and that there's also some time to push for DeJoy, as we were talking about earlier, to get pushed as well. But we appreciate both the advocacy of the organization, also your explanation. I had not been familiar with quite a bit of what Saul had been doing as the head of Social Security. So much appreciated. Alex Lawson, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.